The question is that the motion be called on forthwith. All those of that opinion say aye. To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Mr President, I move private members' business item number 1829 outside the order of precedence, standing in my name on the notice paper for today. Mr President, this motion is in the following terms: that this House expresses its support for the right of communities to engage in peaceful, non-violent protests to protect their land and water. That this House acknowledges the strength of community support for the Bentley coal seam gas blockade in northern New South Wales, including support from A, large cross-section of the local community, B, local councils and mayors, and C, religious and community leaders. 3, that this House notes that a 2012 plebiscite in Lismore City Council found that 87% of local residents oppose coal seam gas exploration and production in their area. And 4, that this House calls on the Coalition Government and New South Wales Police to ensure that the peaceful nature of the blockade is respected and to refrain from the use of emergency powers under Part 6A of the Law Enforcement Powers and Responsibilities Act to break up and disperse this peaceful community action. Madam Deputy President, this motion is essential business for any parliament concerned about the right of freedom of expression, the right of peaceful non-violent protest, and the right for communities to stand up, unite against destructive industries, even if those destructive industries are given the permission by a government of the day. But the right for those communities to stand up against those destructive industries and say their land and their water is too precious to be destroyed for the profits of a well-connected gas exploration and gas mining company, because that's what the people of Lismore, the people of the North Coast, in fact, people around this state are saying, whether it's in the Pilliga or it's in the Mid-North Coast, it's in the Central Coast, it's in the Southern Highlands, around this state, people are saying that they want their government to protect them from the destructive impacts of CSG exploration, CSG drilling. They want no fracking in their aquifers. They want to ensure that the water that is supporting their communities, supporting their farms, supporting their towns, and is clean now, will be clean for their kids and their grandkids. And if ever there has been a statement of a united community, with religious leaders coming to support the Bentley blockade, with mayors and councillors coming to support the Bentley blockade, with local councils resolving with overwhelming majorities to support the blockade, to approve development applications to allow the protesters and the protectors of the land and water to establish their campsites and to have a presence, a legal presence at the site to protect their own land and water. If ever there is an example of unity in the face of wrong-headed government policy and unity in the face of bad laws, it has been the Bentley blockade and the thousands and thousands of people from across the spectrum of society who have united against CSG and said they won't allow the drilling rigs into the site to damage their land and water. Because behind all of this, whether it's the blockade at Glenorchy or Bentley or Doubtful Creek or out in the Pilliga, is a demand from ordinary people that we have clean politics in New South Wales, that we have clean politics and that we have a clean energy future for this state. And clean politics is the core of the demand that they've been making at Bentley. And what we have seen is in these protest after protest and blockade after blockade is a united community being met with a ratcheting up of police power by this government. And we saw the protests and the arrests at Doubtful Creek. We've seen the extraordinary numbers of police that have been amassed over the last few weeks to go with the express intention from this government of breaking the Bentley blockade. And we know that this government has been seriously considering the use of the police emergency powers under Part 6A of the Law Enforcement Powers and Responsibilities Act, the LEPRA Act, has been seriously considering the exercise of those powers to break the blockade at Bentley. And there is an appalling history of governments in this state using these express emergency powers to break up environmental protests, to break up peaceful environmental protests. We saw the former Labor government in 2008 use these exact same emergency powers to break up the climate camp. And we saw these powers put onto the statute books not to break up peaceful protests, not to stop concerned citizens from having engaged in peaceful non-violent protests to protect their land and water. But these extraordinary police powers were put in 2005 in response to the Cronulla riots, rushed through this parliament in only a matter of days. In fact, I withdraw that, not a matter of days, rushed through this parliament with only hours of notice, these emergency powers. And they were never, well at least they were never expressly intended to be used for the purpose of breaking up peaceful non-violent action. Both the Premier of the day, the then Premier of the day, Morris Yema in the other place, and the Leader of the government in this House at the day, I think it was the Honourable John Della Bosca, both read this onto the record when these Part 6A powers were being pushed through the Parliament. They both said, these powers are not intended for use in respect of peaceful protests, union demonstrations and the like. Yet what was one of their first uses after it was passed? To shut down the climate camp, peaceful climate camp protests in 2008. And what has this government been actively considering using them for? To break the Bentley blockade. And I hear the Leader of the government say they were also being considered for Occupy Sydney in an interjection. That is news. That's news that they were considering using these appalling powers
Minister,
to break down Occupy Sydney. Now, you want to withdraw your interjection?
Order. I ask the member to take his seat and the government whip not to interrupt. The Minister has a point of order.
Point of order. The honourable member was misrepresenting what I said. It's not unusual for this member. No wonder he had to leave the bar if that was what his behaviour was.
The opposition whip.
Madam Deputy President, to the point of order, the Minister knows full well that he never went to any standing order, and he does this time and time again when he gets up in debates and makes debating points. I would ask that in the future you bring the Minister to order.
Thank you for your suggestion, but there is however, there is no point of order, and I ask the member to continue.
Yes. And for the record, the appalling abuse of the Leader of the government and his personal invective against me has again no foundation. I haven't left the bar, and I have no intention of leaving the bar.
Are you still working?
And the and if he had a brain, which clearly he doesn't,
Order.
he would understand you can be at the bar without working, but without working at the bar. But moving on from the worthless interjection from the government, and another attempt to throw a spoke in the wheels of democracy, to avert the public's attention from their brutal anti-environment, anti-community agenda, which time and time again comes out when they see a united community, a genuine democratic upswelling of community support for clean air, clean water, and above all, which is what most offends this member, clean politics in this state. Wherever they see it, they want to step in, interject and put the police in.
Dr. John Kay, Mr. David Shoebridge will resume his seat. Minister on a point of order.
Madam Deputy President, I find the imputation that I am against. Can you wait a second?
The opposition deputy whip will not interject. The Minister on a point of order.
Madam Deputy President, the imputation that I am against clean politics I find offensive, and I ask the honourable member to withdraw. Well, he made imputations about me and didn't withdraw them. That were wrong. He lied to the chamber, and you know that's
to the point of order.
Dr. John Kay will not interrupt.
To the point of order.
Mr. David Shoebridge on the point of order.
For the member, with his constant gross and unfounded aspersions that he makes in interjections and statements against myself, to have such a glass jaw that he's concerned and makes an intervention, a point of order, to try and stop a discussion about clean politics in this chamber shows not only a glass jaw of this member, but the glass jaw of this government on the whole issue of clean politics.
Minister, to the point of order.
Madam President, it is not about a discussion. It was about a statement that I was against clean politics in this state. And I once again ask you to instruct the honourable member to withdraw that allegation.
Order.
I find it offensive.
Order. The standing orders are quite clear on how these matters are dealt with. The words themselves were not offensive. The imputation, however, was. So I will call the honourable member to order for the first time. Mr. David Shoebridge has the call.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I acknowledge and accept your ruling. But what are these extraordinary emergency powers that can be used under Part 6A? Well, first of all, it allows a commissioner of police or a deputy or assistant commissioner to authorise the use of emergency powers when they have reasonable grounds for believing that there's a large-scale public disorder occurring or a threat of a disorder, and are satisfied that the powers are necessary. What's public disorder defined as? A riot or other civil disturbance that gives rise to a serious risk to public safety, whether at a single location or resulting from a series of incidents. The thought that peaceful protest would be being considered as that kind of civil disorder by both this government and senior police is deeply disturbing. And what is the target area that they can apply these emergency powers in? Well, it's as big or as little as they want. It can be a town, it can be a roadway, it can be a farm, it can be a region, it can be a locality. Wherever the senior police determine they want the emergency powers, they can simply draw a line in the map and they have the emergency powers in that area. How long does it last? Well, it lasts for 48 hours, right? A maximum of 48 hours. But of course, they can extend it by application to the Supreme Court. And where can the powers be exercised? Well, these emergency powers, and I'll detail what they are in 1 second, can be exercised not only within the target area and any public place in the target area. And public place is an extraordinarily broad definition and would almost certainly have covered the camp of protesters that we've seen at Bentley. Would almost certainly cover the paddocks around the entrance to the farm where the blockade was done, and would certainly cover the roadways in those areas. But they can not only be exercised in the target area, but a good many of these powers to stop, detain and search vehicles and detain property can be exercised anywhere in the state with certain limitations. What emergency powers was this government considering giving to the police? First of all, the power to set up roadblocks and cordons, to stop and search people or vehicles, or to stop people and vehicles entering or leaving the target area. Police can put a cordon around a target area and establish a roadblock in the target area. Once they've set up their roadblocks and cordons, they can stop and search any vehicle in the target area. Police officer without warrant can stop and search a vehicle, and anything in the vehicle, and anyone inside the vehicle. And they can stop the vehicles for as long as they think reasonably necessary to do the search. Having stopped the vehicles and been able to search the people within the vehicles, they can also, without warrant, any police officer within the target area can stop and search any person in the target area. They can perform a frisk search on anyone in the target area. And they can search anything in the possession of the person in the target area. They go through your mobile phone records. They go through your backpack, or any documents that you have with you. And they can detain the person as long as they think reasonably necessary to do that. The police officers within the target area can demand proof of identity, can demand to know everybody's name and address. And they can then request a proof of identity in the form of documents. And anyone who doesn't give the police these details faces a criminal offence and a maximum fine of $550 or 12 months imprisonment. And within the target area, and this is where it becomes absolutely like martial law, the police can, as part of a search of a vehicle or a person in the target area, can seize and keep for up to 7 days any vehicle, any mobile phone, or, as the legislation so extraordinarily phrases it, any other thing. And they can hold on to it for a maximum of 7 days. They can take your vehicle, take your mobile phone, take all your possessions as a result of a search, if they think it'll assist in preventing or controlling public disorder. And as well, And here we get to sort of the Joe Bjorky-Peterson powers. A police officer can direct any group of people in the target area to disperse immediately. The police officer just has to tell the group that the direction is given for the purpose of preventing or controlling a public disorder. And if people don't disperse, if they don't leave the area, if they don't break up the crowd, break up the blockade, then they face a maximum penalty of $550. And a wish to maintain the protest, a wish to maintain your democratic right to protest would not be considered a reasonable excuse. Perhaps the fact that you're locked on to something might well be, but no doubt that will be tested. But then these emergency powers would also allow the police to search and detain vehicles that are outside the target area. A police officer can search and detain a vehicle and its occupants, can actually seize possessions of things if they suspect on reasonable grounds that the occupants of the vehicle have participated or intend to participate in the public disorder, and the officer is satisfied the exercise of those powers is reasonably necessary to prevent or control disorder. The seizure and detention powers are also there, but thankfully, and this is the one small limitation in the bill, they can't disperse groups outside the target area. This is effectively martial law, where police will have the power and other people's rights will be extremely limited. These laws should never be considered for peaceful protest. We should be demanding now that this government says they will never use these powers for peaceful protests, for peaceful environmental protests. I commend the motion to the House, but I commend the strength of the community. The Bentley blockade, those thousands of ordinary individuals who put their lives and their time on the line to protect what's precious to them.
Madam Deputy President.
Minister.